Greetings and blessings, and welcome to a new edition of Curious Naked Diatribes. I know it's been a while now. I figured 8 months is long enough for a break. So it's time to jump back into the action. Now, there's so much to talk about. It's giving me vertigo just thinking about it. But for this episode, I'm going to focus on the ongoing TikTok saga. There's a critical deadline approaching in 10 days' time, so I'd like to revisit the current situation. And we're also approaching 9/11/25, so I'm going to revisit a speech called Come September by Arundhati Roy that was given 23 years ago. That is 1 year after the 2001 terror attacks in the US. I believe that speech is just as vital today as it was over 2 decades ago. That's all coming up. Stay tuned. A lot of us take social media for granted. It's right there on our phones every day. We open it up, chat with friends, watch videos, generally not giving a great deal of a thought to the who, the what, the where, the why, until now. Now, TikTok has been in app stores internationally since 2017, but over the years it has become the center of controversy and a struggle for ownership and control. It's currently facing an ultimatum from the US government: sell the company or you'll be banned in the US. The deadline, September 17th, 2025. So how did we get here? Well, I have to be honest. When I first heard about TikTok, I didn't really get it. I thought it was all just about dance trend videos. And I remember thinking how strange it was to see anything other than dance videos. I later found out it was more than that. A lot more. And I have another confession. I really only downloaded the app to see what all the fuss was about. I wasn't living in the US at the time, but I remember hearing that Trump was threatening to ban the app over fears of national security threats. The Chinese owned it, so it had to be suspicious. I mean, there is no greater sport in US politics than stoking fear over China. Lawmakers were convinced, or wanted to convince us anyway, that they were up to no good, so they demanded national security reviews. Well, here's my pro tip. It's not about national security. If nobody's told you before, let me be the first. This has nothing to do with national security or protecting our data from spies. Why do I say this? It's well documented that big tech giants in the US make good money from our data. That's profit, son. That's business. If the service is free, you are the product being sold. Your likes, your comments, your shares, your interests, your marital status, your gender identity, your political views, all of it for sale. If you're tired of hearing that, good. You understand. If this is your first time, well, it's an honor to inform you. It's also been well documented that US politicians openly fear the rise of technological advancement in China and call for its suppression. And you can bet US big tech has their attention. It's all about Silicon Valley, baby. Mark Zuckerberg stood before Congress over Cambridge Analytica. It wasn't really about putting an end to data harvesting. It's not so much that lawmakers have a problem with exploiting your private data. It's that US companies are not able to get a piece of the action in the TikTok case. Talk about hypocrisy. Everything that the US accuses China of doing, the US has done plenty. Mass surveillance? Check. But there's also another reason the US wants to control TikTok. And it has to do with controlling dissent, controlling the narrative. Really, what Washington and the big tech giants in Silicon Valley want from us is mindless, passive consumption. We live in a capitalist society, after all. And what does it depend on? What does it demand? Mindless, passive consumption. hence the massive collection and sale of our data to more efficiently steer us toward becoming better consumers. And for those of us who are onto the game, the algorithm. Those of us attempting to leverage social media to create a more just, more egalitarian, better educated, healthier society. The algorithm. What better tool to use to silence dissent than an invisible agent that weeds out the undesirables, the malcontents, the activists, the free thinkers? You've heard the term shadow banning, I'm sure. To algorithmically censor content without the poster even knowing, much less being able to prove that anything has happened. And on it goes. This is 21st century capitalism and the struggle to control the narrative through technology. So we are now in September, and we're moving to a speech given 23 years ago by writer-activist Arundhati Roy called Come September. It's a speech that I like to revisit often because it doesn't seem to lose its relevance over time. Some of you hadn't even been born when this speech was given, 1 year following the horrific events of September 11, 2001.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that.
It was a defining moment in history. And like all defining moments in history, it was also a teachable moment, containing within it a lesson to be drawn. And what did we learn from the events of this day and its aftermath? We're living in a post-9/11 world, we were frequently reminded, those of us old enough to remember. What did this mean? It meant we had entered the global war on terrorism, and that we had better shape up, or we too could be thrown into a detention facility. And by the way, Guantanamo Bay is still operating to this day, despite promises from Obama and Biden to close it.
Even before I came into office, I was very clear that in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right, but we tortured some folks.
Following the September 11 attacks, George W. Bush and his cronies made the division very clear. You were either with us, the U.S., or you were with the terrorists. And so the vaguely defined term terrorism was set loose on the population in a new dawn of maximum surveillance. I remember how quickly things escalated. Anyone with even a trace of brown skin was suspect. One of my favorite Lebanese restaurants was targeted, and they subsequently displayed an American flag in self-defense. If you were lucky, you'd only be labeled anti-American.
It isn't necessary to be anti-national to be deeply suspicious of all nationalism, to be anti-nationalism. Nationalism of one kind or another was the cause of most of the genocide of the 20th century. Flags are bits of colored cloth that governments use first to shrink wrap people's brains and then as ceremonial shrouds to bury the dead.
And we witnessed, as the next several years unfolded, just how many thousands of dead would be buried. We marched, we chanted, we raised our signs. Not just in the US, but all over the world, people were calling for a peaceful resolution. But it was too late, and all we could do was stand by and watch as the US used 9/11 to justify one of the longest wars in US history, lasting just 2 months short of 20 years. The war in Afghanistan.
Every day I'm taken aback at how many people believe that opposing the war in Afghanistan amounts to supporting terrorism or voting for the Taliban. Now that the initial aim of the war, capturing Osama bin Laden, dead or alive, seems to have run into bad weather, the goalposts have been moved. It's being made out the whole point of the war was to topple the Taliban regime and liberate Afghan women from their burqas. We are being asked to believe that the US Marines are actually on a feminist mission.
Throughout her speech, Roy talks about the other 9/11s in order to, as she put it, share the grief of history. She spoke of September 11th, 1973, when Augusto Pinochet carried out a CIA-backed coup against the democratically elected Allende government in Chile. The Pinochet regime marked a reign of terror that would last nearly 2 decades, with dissidents captured, tortured, and executed, all with the nod of approval from Henry Kissinger and the US State Department.
In 1999, following the arrest of General Pinochet in Britain, thousands of secret documents were declassified by the US government. They contain unequivocal evidence of the CIA's involvement in the coup, as well as the fact that the US government had detailed information about the situation in Chile during General Pinochet's reign. Yet, Kissinger assured the general of his support. In the United States, as you know, we are sympathetic to what you're trying to do, he said. We wish your government well.
As I learned during my time in Guatemala, this would hardly be the only time the United States has carried out coups, not just in Latin America, but throughout the world. You begin to realize just how necessary it is for the power structure, the capitalists, the corporations, what have you, to control public opinion, what Noam Chomsky calls manufacturing consent. They need us to believe in certain myths to continue the wars, to ensure new markets and soaring profits. And to circle back now, what better way to do this than through social media? Controlling the narrative. That's why TikTok has become such a problem. Let me give you a perfect example. After the October 7th uprising in Gaza in 2023, Israel responded with a vengeance, a brutal killing force that has targeted and killed journalists, bombed hospitals and schools, terrorized families, reduced homes to rubble, and has now taken tens of thousands of civilian lives through a program of mass starvation. We simply could not believe nor tolerate what we were seeing and continue to see. So many of us took to TikTok to protest, to demand an end to the genocide that was unfolding right before our eyes. TikTok was, at least for a time, a place where human rights activists, and really just any human being who was horrified by what was happening, could express their outrage and not have their videos instantly removed. And that's when things started to change. The pro-Israel propagandists got to work on how to put an end to the Palestine activism on college campuses and social media. They needed to control the narrative. They needed everyone to see Israel as the innocent victim, and that it all started on October 7th. Something that anyone who has done even the most minimal research knows is absolutely ridiculous. You would often hear people simply say October 7 and think that they had just ended the argument. In a very similar way, people could just press a magic 9/11 button and instantly shut down all debate.
On the 11th of September 1922, ignoring Arab outrage, the British government proclaimed a mandate in Palestine, a follow-up to the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which Imperial Britain issued with its army massed outside the gates of Gaza. The Balfour Declaration promised European Zionists a national home for Jewish people. At the time, the empire on which the sun never set was free to snatch and bequeath national homes like a school bully distributes marbles. How carelessly imperial power vivisected ancient civilizations. Palestine and Kashmir are Imperial Britain's festering, blood-drenched gifts to the modern world. Both are fault lines in the raging international conflicts of today.
Roy spoke very powerfully to the condition that Palestinians have suffered for generations. And this was from a speech given 23 years ago. I'll leave you with this final clip as we approach another 9/11 and a September 17th deadline for the sale of TikTok. And if you're still unsure about whose narrative they want to control, I want you to reflect on the fact that TikTok has hired Erica Mindell, a former IDF instructor, to police so-called hate speech and anti-Semitism. I want you to think about how little has changed and how far we still need to go. I want you to consider what it means to be able to speak freely without fear of reprisal on social media or anywhere.
In 1967, Israel occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Over the decades, there have been uprisings, wars, intifadas. Tens of thousands have lost their lives. Accords and treaties have been signed, ceasefires declared and violated. But the bloodshed doesn't end. Palestine still remains illegally occupied. Its people live in inhuman conditions in virtual Bantustans, where they are subjected to collective punishments, 24-hour curfews, where they are humiliated and brutalized on a daily basis. They never know when their homes will be demolished, when their children will be shot, when their precious trees will be cut, when their roads will be closed, when they will be allowed to walk down to the market to buy food and medicine, and when they will not. They live with no semblance of dignity, with not much hope in sight. They have no control over their lands, their security, their movement, their communication, their water supply. So when accords are signed and words like autonomy and even statehood bandied about, it's always worth asking, what sort of autonomy, what sort of state, what sort of rights will its citizens have?
Thanks for listening. Que todo sea amor, walk tall, live free.